Today on Ancient DOS Games, we're taking a look at Hugo's House of Horrors, the first in a trilogy of inventory-based adventures which are often remembered fondly for containing spooky elements without really being horror games. Not to mention, it's one of only a tiny handful of games to mimic Sierra's adventure game interpreter engine, which crossed graphical elements with a text parser for typing in what you wanted to do. This probably isn't going to be a very long episode because this game was actually a lot shorter than I was expecting. And I mean a lot shorter. If you know exactly what to do, you could probably speedrun this in under 10 minutes. It's that short. Now, short doesn't mean bad, but even going in with no past experience, I was able to beat this in under an hour. Technically. The end of the game kind of throws a sucker punch at you, and we'll definitely go over some of the more unusual quirks as such. Hugo's House of Horrors was originally released right at the start of 1990 by a very small one-man company known as Gray Design Associates, run by David Gray, who for nearly 2 decades now has focused exclusively on a fairly extensive jigsaw puzzle program, though he still sells his old Hugo games as well. This one's a one-player inventory-based adventure game, featuring 320 by 216 color EGA graphics and PC speaker sound. Now, for some odd reason, the game states it runs in VGA color, and even claims it's trying to switch to mode 13 if it fails to start up the graphics. But that's clearly not what's happening. This is only a 16 color game, not a 256 color game, and the 16 color VGA mode is basically just the 16 color EGA mode with access to the VGA palette functions. And since it doesn't do any palette modifications, it actually runs perfectly fine with an EGA instead of VGA. So it's technically an EGA game despite claiming otherwise. As for its current release date, it was once shareware, but David Gray doesn't officially provide download links for the shareware versions of the Hugo games anymore. Probably because the shareware versions are pretty much the entire game, just lacking some recording and playback features for having the game play itself. So it's safe to say the games are more commercial now rather than shareware. Not that you can't track down the old shareware copies if you go hunting for them. Now you have 2 options for obtaining the game, and in fact the entire trilogy of Hugo games, by either going to the Good Old Games website at www.gog.com or the Gray Design Associates website at www.dgray.com. Generally speaking, you'll probably want to grab the trilogy off GOG, as it's only $6 there compared to buying it from the official website where it's $10. However, the GOG version does not come with the DOS or Windows executables, and instead runs exclusively through ScummVM. So if you intend to run these games on an old DOS or Windows 3.1 machine, you'll definitely want to get it from the Gray Design Associates website, which will get you all the necessary files to do this, and can still be run through ScummVM if you so desire. Only skipping the story section because it's a really simple story this time around. You play the role of Hugo, who's come to a haunted house to rescue his love, Penelope, who came here supposedly to do some babysitting, but hasn't been seen or heard from since. Much of the lore of the Hugo series hadn't really been defined by this point, so that's really all you have to go on. The only trouble is that, well, I'm already stuck trying to get through this door. I mean, I found the key, but it won't let me use it. I mean, come on, all I want to do is unlock the front door and... Oh, wait, I just have to type in unlock door, don't I? Yep, okay. So, something I should point out about this game right away is that there's no traditional use command like you would normally find in any game with a text parser. The number of items in this game is actually rather small, and each one has a specific verb assigned to it. So to perform an action with an item, you have to type in the exact verb to match what you intend to do with that item. Not that you simply want to use that item. Anywho, here's a room with some spooky guests, all sitting around the table eating, food? Also, I like how the drinks are surprisingly well coordinated. The vampire has a red drink, so it's clearly blood. Alien's being a rebel and drinking something purple, and yes, it's an alien, I hex edited the executable to figure that one out. And as for what everyone else is drinking, it's green. Oh hey, the butler wants to give me a chop, whatever that is. Actually, according to this, he just chopped my head off. Oh great, is this going to be one of those games which has graphics yet tells you everything that happens in text without actually showing... Oh. So I continued exploring the house and found a variety of things. I found a candle, which let me see under the staircase, where I found a whistle and a penknife. I found the number 333 on a bathroom mirror, which is half of 666, so this place is confirmed half evil. And in a bedroom wardrobe, I found... what is that? I literally typed this in, and the game told me it had no idea. So my first guess was severed head, and then the game told me it looked more like a mask. Oh, okay, so the game does know what it is, so then why did it tell me it didn't? Freaking lying narrations. Actually, I wonder what these things look like up close. So I typed in look at penknife, and... okay, something that AGI games are really good at was showing you little pictures of the things you had in your inventory so you can get an idea of what they looked like and how they might function. But this game fails to do that, so that's kind of a strike against it. Oh hey, I found a dog to play with. Okay, scratch that. This dog just freaking mauled me. Given the decapitation earlier, this is probably going to be some gruesome mess with dismembered body parts and guts everywhere and... ow. Wait a minute, did I already do this joke? I ultimately meet up with the mad scientist who manages to shrink me, and in my attempts to return to normal, I also become confused and ethereal. Well, actually, that ethereal one would have been really useful, except for some reason I couldn't just walk through the door, even though I was clearly phasing through the door handle, which makes zero sense, but whatever. The most important thing was I found a bung. A bung. You know, one of these goes in one of these. See, that's the bung, and that's the bung hole. And what you do is insert the bung into the bung hole, and this is just getting worse the more I explain it, so I'm just going to censor the whole thing. Eventually, while wearing the monster mask, I get a pork chop from the butler and throw it at the dog to keep it satiated while I find a hidden trap door to go downstairs. Now, something really important I need to point out is that up to this point, you'll really only use like 3 items, despite having found several more. If you haven't found everything before you go down this trap door, you're boned, because the dog will become hostile again and will not let you go back down. So I recommend saving before going down there. In any case, there's a secret passage to take into a cave full of bats, and this one's a little weird. You have to use the whistle to confuse the bats, but the effect isn't immediately obvious because they're still going to be headed towards you when you blow the whistle, so it's best to actually move a little first, then blow the whistle. Otherwise, they may still run right into you, which, unfortunately, these bats are of the vampiric variety, and you probably don't want them biting you. Then you have to deal with a mummy. Now, this mummy is not technically an inventory puzzle, rather a puzzle of abusing the AI. The mummy always runs towards you, but is very poor at getting around objects, so you basically have to trick the mummy into getting stuck on the corner of one of the rocks in the room. There literally is no other way to get past it. But then you come up to this part. This is the second last puzzle in the game. We have to use the bung to plug up a hole in the boat so that it doesn't sink when we try to ride it. Then we have to cut the rope so that the boat can move freely. But then there's this guy. This freaking guy. Okay, so there's a couple things I need to address. Firstly, the game has a weird thing going on where if you're expected to answer a question, you need to clear the message box by typing in your response. Because if you hit the enter key instead, it'll immediately input a blank text entry as your answer. So the moment you're expected to respond to someone or something, do not hit enter. Just type in your response. Secondly, though, this guy is like the bridge keeper in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Except instead of answering 5 questions, or 3 questions, you have to answer 7. And half of these are not easy. In fact, given that this game came out pre-internet, you couldn't just look these answers up online. So this was actually a serious roadblock for many players. Now, later revisions of the registered version actually came with a hint file which just flat out listed the answers to these trivia questions, but this wasn't included with the shareware versions. It's also interesting to note that the last question in the later versions asks if you really want to rescue Penelope, whereas earlier versions asked if you registered the game or not. And then the last puzzle of the game is just give some money to the guard and there you go. You've rescued Penelope and get married, because that's what all lovers do after a grueling ordeal with the supernatural. Actually, probably not. But hey, we just beat the game, so what more is there to say? Oh, actually there is one last thing I want to quickly point out. This freaking broom. Now pay attention. This is very important. This broom represents a pivotal moment in this game as it's infused with magic and resists all attempts to take it. Now, being enchanted, you'll naturally want to try everything you can think of to get it, but unfortunately, nothing ever seems to work. Heck, I actually went back and tried again after I beat the game just because I wanted to be sure I tried everything and... Oh, wait, what? Overall, Hugo's House of Horrors is neat, but super short. And just to demonstrate how short it is, I have my own speedrun attempt going in the background right now and fast forward. Whether it was worth its relatively high asking price when it was brand new is debatable, but one thing to remember is that Sierra didn't have a lot of competition for the kinds of games they were making, so seeing an independent developer come up with their own take on the format was interesting. Given that you can get all 3 games in the Hugo trilogy for a low cost nowadays, I would say it's definitely worth a try for people who like inventory-based adventure games, even if only a little. Just be aware these games do have their quirks and do play slightly differently than you might expect. Yep, just leave cycle set to auto and you're good to go. This does make some of the title sequence go by faster than it's supposed to, but really, all you're missing is seeing David Gray's name stay on screen multiple times, so you're not missing much. Anywho, that's all for the last regular episode of Ancient DOS Games for the year. Next Saturday is going to be a filler video to talk about what to expect for November and December, as I have a quartet of fillers lined up following, where I'm going to be talking about the Windows sequels to DOS titles. And then regular episodes of ADG will continue with episode 226 on January 6th, 2018. Plus, there'll be shovelware diggers, Sunday live streams, and some other videos to pass the time as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all of it. 5 minutes, 21.75 seconds. I know I can do better than that, so consider that a challenge time to beat with the DOS version. I suspect it runs better in ScumVM, so feel free to do even better there too.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and special thanks to those of you supporting me on Patreon. Here's just a small sample of you guys.